Presenting Sigmar's Chosen, and well, I am Sigmar's Lorekeeper. In celebration of the release of 4th edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, we are talking about the objectively best faction in all of Warhammer history, and they happen to be my personal favorite, which is not connected at all to that boasting, the Stormcast Eternals. To put it bluntly, the Stormcast Eternals are Sigmar's mightiest, his bulwark to withstand the forces of ruin, and his spearhead into chaos. They are the mightiest warriors the forces of order have to offer. Now, they are one of the few factions that virtually did not exist up until the Age of Sigmar, so we have very little to discuss leading up to that point in history. The origins of the Stormcast Eternals is probably one of the most elaborated and definitely the most discussed in lore. In fact, I'm sure many of you already know many of these things. For those of you that don't, let me explain. The Stormcast Eternals did not exist in the Age of Myth whatsoever. In this age, Sigmar ruled a kingdom alongside his pantheon of fellow gods that spanned the entirety of the mortal realms. And all was good for a long while, and the realms were won by the hands of mortals fighting with faith in their hearts. Although, as we've discussed many times before, and we will continue to do, the powers of chaos seeped into the realms and corrupted many of these faithful mortals, leading to rising conflict and eventually all-out war. You see, one of the main reasons the denizens of the mortal realms sold their souls to chaos was for power in any form, be it martial might or arcane knowledge. Some people didn't like being helpless, squishy meat sacks, living under what they thought to be oppressive gods. When chaos fully emerged, the forces of ruin now had super soldiers, juiced up on all the blessings of the dark gods. These warriors were physically stronger, more resilient, and possessed powers unknown to the mortal armies of everyday men and women. If you've ever had to face Varangard in the tabletop, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And even when they did die, sometimes they would just come back a few days later, or ascend to demonhood only getting stronger. Eventually, at the Battle of the Burning Skies, Sigmar and his armies were beaten back and forced to retreat to High Azir. This was a blow to Sigmar, and with his pantheon shattered, only the Dwarden smithing god Grungi remained at his side. But then came a realization. The forces of the dark gods had already destroyed his world once before, and he could not hope to beat them if he approached it the same way he did the last time. Devout, fearless, but mortal armies would not be enough this time. He needed blessed, immortal warriors of his own, fighting fire with fire. For this ultimate task, he needed souls. And so souls he went a search. He handpicked those who showed courage, strength, and valor in the face of chaos, plucked at the moment of their deaths by a bolt of lightning, and swept up to Azir. Some were chosen for fighting harder than anyone else in the face of unbeatable odds, with hordes of chaos worshippers knocking at the gates. But not all who were chosen to be Stormcast were chosen because they knew how to swing hammer good and bonk real hard. Others were chosen for other virtues Sigmar admired, like a priest devoting himself to helping the weak with prayers and healing, even when 3,000 corn berserkers are on their way to skin you alive. And others were chosen for their sheer hatred of chaos, spitting in its face even when a Lord of Change is warping your insides. To become a Stormcast, there's a simple 3-step process. Number 1, have your soul utterly blasted apart by bolts of holy lightning. After all, before you can be built up, you must first be torn down. Number 2, your soul is then excruciatingly put back together piece by piece like a jigsaw puzzle, leaving only worthy virtues, such as tactical genius, strength, courage, and resilience. Finally, your soul is reforged, imbued with the blessings of the gods and a portion of Sigmar's divine might himself, in the Anvil of Apotheosis, which sounds like a sick heavy metal album. As you can probably guess, this is not a painless process. In fact, most do not survive the process and are blasted to smithereens, their souls never again seeing the light of day, not even going to Nagash. But those that do are reborn as something stronger, as Stormcast Eternals. There is one exception to this process, however. Lord Commander Bastian Chadphalos, the biggest badass in all the realms with balls of pure Sigmarite. He faced Archaon in battle, coming out with a grievous wound, leaving him almost dead, but still fighting long enough to cover the escape of his warriors and countless innocents against the endless hordes of chaos, almost single-handedly, being the last to cross the gate into Azir. Oh, and did I mention he did all this while still human? He couldn't die to be chosen by Sigmar, so he walked straight into the Anvil of Apotheosis and came out 4 feet taller and a whole lot angrier. As a master tactician and logistician, and one of the best fighters in Azir, he was made Lord Commander of the Hammers of Sigmar. During the waning decades of the Age of Chaos, they trained endlessly in the Gladiatorium, a coliseum where they fought each other as hard as they could for decades, honing their skills to the point of perfection, wiping out all chaos tint and destruction tint in a Z. They came out 8 feet tall and clad in Sigmarite, stronger than any material in the realms, wielding the best weapons forged by the 6 smiths themselves, those blessed by Grungy. This is where the fun begins. But first, how does one send your brand spanking new army that still has that new car smell into the realms to liberate it from the grips of chaos? If you guessed, throw them down in great bolts of lightning where they are needed. Ding ding ding, congratulations, here's your medal. The armies of Sigmar struck hard and fast all over the realms. The hammers of Sigmar waged bloody battles down to the man against the bloodbound hordes of Khorne in Akshi. The pious Hallowed Knights waged brutal wars of attrition on the forces of Grandpappy Nurgle and Gairan, and the Celestial Vindicators tore down Tzeentchian sorcerers in camp. Sigmar's perfect soldiers were so effective that they were consistently taking dubs even when outnumbered 20-1. But there is an issue when your armies exclusively contain perfectly trained soldiers that take decades to train and create. Eventually, they will die. No matter how strong they are, they were always outnumbered. And even though they won more often than not, it was usually only with a handful of survivors. They took fighting to the last man a bit too seriously. But my main man Sigmar accounted for this. When a Stormcast was slain in battle, their souls were picked up on an express train back to Azir in a bolt of lightning, incinerating whatever managed to finally bring them down in holy electricity. Their souls are eventually reforged, put through that same excruciating process before, but remade anew and sent back out to fight. This presented another minor issue. If your soldiers know they can't die, they get reckless, jumping headfirst into a bloodthirster because they will just come back to fight another time. This, combined with the process of the reforging not exactly perfect, had some big implications, but more on that later. One of the aspects that makes them the most effective fighting force in all the mortal realms is their ability to adapt and excel in any situation, mostly thanks to the diversity in their ranks. No, I'm not talking about the 800 war scrolls in their range. Well, I actually kind of am. A storm host is comprised of a diverse amalgamation of specialists: the Warrior Chamber, Extremist Chamber, Vanguard Chamber, and Ruination Chamber. Trust me, this is by no means a complete list, just the most relevant. I mean, look at this picture of a storm host hierarchy and composition. This is a very complex system and has a lot of lore to each aspect, way too much for one video. So if for some reason you want a deep dive into the logistics of a Stormcast army, feel free to let me know in the comments. The Warrior Chamber, the backbone of every storm host, the ultimate line holders and generalists on the field. These are the boots on the ground soldiers, ready to face any foe with shield and hammer in hand, or spear, or sword, or great sword, or great hammer, or axe, or Sigmar. Damn it, there are so many war scrolls. Regardless, every storm host relies on these brave souls to be the shields of the realms. The Extremist Chamber, the Muscle, the deadliest individual soldiers in any storm host, ready to deliver the God King's justice on the backs of mighty steeds. So badass, they are chosen by the descendants of dragons to ride into battle and eviscerate their foes with fire, lightning, and strength. Whether it be charging Dracothian Guard, crumpling their foes under their feet, or a dragon rider dousing the battlefield in flames, Sigmar's will be done. The Vanguard Chamber, however, are scouts, the eyes and ears of Sigmar in the mortal realms. They are fast, ranged focus hunters, tacticians who prefer guerrilla tactics, patrolling and harassing the edge of an enemy force instead of slamming their heads into them like those gorillas in the Warrior Chamber, am I right? They are vital though. Their speed and tact give tactical information to the storm host before a battle even begins. And finally, the newbies, the Ruination Chamber. Remember when I said the process of reforging wasn't exactly perfect? Well, each time a Stormcast Eternal dies, a bit of their soul is sometimes lost in the process. To simplify for now, when too much is lost, there's almost no humanity left, so they are sent to the Ruination Chamber. These soldiers are the last resort, not only because their numbers are limited and one more death could be the end of their minds, but because so many deaths mean these are the ultimate veterans. Each could easily take on 2 to 3 of their fellow Stormcast single-handedly, and their lack of a soul means they're incredibly resistant to Chaos's corruptive tendencies. The flaws of the reforging are well known among the Stormcast Eternals. Everyone knows that Maximus Chaos Slayer isn't the same after his 30th death in the 100 years he's served, but what wasn't well known by the inhabitants of the mortal realms, or even the Stormcast themselves, is how deep of a flaw this was. Sometimes eternal life is more of a curse than a blessing. Is it worth living forever if you lose all knowledge of what life is? How can one be expected to defend the innocent if you have no knowledge on what it is you're even defending in the first place? Terrifying analogies of the dehumanizing nature of war in our own world aside, this diversity in forces means a storm host of Stormcast Eternals has an answer for every situation. They can rain meteors and astral spears from the skies, from winged soldiers and some of the best wizards wizards in the realms. They can channel the God King's wrath in bolts of lightnings to turn their foes to ashes. But they are limited in numbers, and as the Age of Sigmar progresses, more and more threats appear from out of the woodworks. Like, oh, I don't know, an entire Skaven city popping out of the ground. These poster boys are spread thinner and thinner every day. It takes years upon years to train a single Stormcast, and with more and more being sent to the Ruination Chamber every year, they are in a tough spot. All this being said, they are still the strongest hammer the Champions of Order have against the forces of chaos. So I guess it's a good thing they're the buffest boys around. If you enjoyed this video, because I sure did, let me know what interests you most about the immortal warriors of the God King. Sigmar knows there is plenty more to be said about them. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to show me how hyped you are for 4th edition. And remember to comment any thoughts or suggestions you have for the future. That is all I have for now. I am Sigmar's Lorekeeper. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.